And we're now pleased to welcome Kath Mazzella, who's coming to us from Perth in Western Australia. Kath, it's wonderful to have you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jocelynne. Yes, 30 years ago, I was misdiagnosed and I went to 2 GPs and 2 gynecologists and was told it's common to have lumps in the vulva, not to worry about it. In the end, I asked for it to be removed and it turned out to be cancer, and I had my clitoris, vulva and lymph glands removed. I was pretty naive in those days, but I soon discovered that most women's health organisations wouldn't allow me in the door to speak because it's very sensitive and intimate and I might upset some cultures. But I just want to share with you this lady's story. She's 23 and she died 6 months ago of vulval cancer, and we just had a fundraiser for her, but her mother and father are just left devastated. Can I just read this to you, and I hope it doesn't take too long?
Oh no, please do. Please do.
Kayla was diagnosed with lichen sclerosus when she was 11 years of age. Let me tell you, I know another young girl that had lichen sclerosus at 11, but they had to check with the father that he wasn't sexually abusing the 11-year-old because she had this bleeding vulva. So, there's a lot of stories that we don't need, that I want you to hear. Anyhow, I'll carry on. When Kayla had the lichen sclerosus, the mother was not informed that it was a precursor to vulval cancer. The year past had flared up, treated with steroid and canesten cream. It was given comfort, would be better or worse, but controlled. In the year that followed, a close family friend was diagnosed with vulval cancer and told me that she had lichen sclerosus and is a precursor to vulval cancer. In our conversation, that's how I found out. According to Jean Hales, 1 in 80 women have got lichen sclerosus. And it seems to me a lot of doctors are treating the vulva for thrush or any other thing, but doctors are not informed enough about the vulva. But I find that women's groups still don't want to go down that track, and yet I think that's where we lose our empowerment. Anyhow, getting back to Kayla. In 2021, she had painful lesions come up and not responding to treatment. Kayla went to the doctor, who referred her to her early in November 21. The gynecologist proceeded stronger steroid, making it worse, saying straight out not to worry, as it was not cancer because he'd seen it before and suspected abscess, so more antibiotics for 2 weeks. Back to the gynecologist, more antibiotics, 2 more weeks, and it's now Christmas. The doctor suggested a bio in the chair on Christmas Eve. Kayla did not want more pain for Christmas. Doctor gave her a letter. If needed, she should go to the Women's Hospital over the break. On the 2nd of January, Kayla rang us down south saying she was in great pain and to come home. She was admitted to hospital. She was under another gynecologist who put her IV antibiotics. After a week, she came home still not good. More antibiotics and puncture biopsy, which was thought to be Crohn's disease. More antibiotics. Kayla had her engagement party. Things got worse. Kayla thought it was because she was dancing it got worse. Now late January 22. On request, a biopsy was done with a healthy tissue to compare. They told Kayla she had squamous cell carcinoma, non-HPV. Mine was HPV. A radical vulvectomy, the removal of her clitoris and vulva, and redirection of the urethra. It was scheduled for 2 weeks. This seemed like a long time to wait. Kayla was in a private patient in a public hospital, but prepared to go to private. However, the wait was similar. This cancer had doubled in size by the time of the operation. Kayla's surgery was brutal, having her clitoris removed. The results came back 3 with further surgery. Required was our preference to have surgery done as soon as possible, as there was a cancer focus on top of the margin. So Kayla got married on the 18th of September before she died. I've had hundreds of these stories and I'm sick of these stories and women not doing anything about it. Kayla had her egg retrieval, then chemotherapy and radiation for 6 weeks, then back to have a second incision. This time came back as good margins. We thought all was done, all good. Kayla went back to work. Then another scan that showed cancer had become metastatic clavicle, lung lumbar. The worst day. We had 3 choices. Come up with a lot of money for the best possible option at our own cost, $40,000. Have chemotherapy, only government funded, and know Kayla would die. Or try to only target therapy and do this shit show that was a whole new chapter in this horrible book. So the mother and the father and the brother are out there picking up the pieces like my husband picked up 30 years ago. My husband had 5 bypasses 2 years after my operation. It's like, oh yeah, it's just women's vulvas, so who cares? Well, I care. I care about the lawyer that died last year. Horrific death on the East Coast. I know a woman in a country town. She's 32, got 2 little children, and she's got a bowel bag and a bladder bag. But who cares? I care. Allow me to get a bit emotional here. I'll calm down. But we had there was a minister speak in Canada about the power of the vulva and the vagina and how much we're missing. But I know that there's the Great Vagina Wall out there. And I've been to his studio, and he said, oh, but that's what women call it. And so recently I went to a radiologist, and she said, what treatment did you have? I said, a radical vulvectomy. And I said, do you know what that is? And she pointed down there, and she said, oh, in the vagina area. And I said, no, it's the vulval area. She said, no, the whole thing is the vagina. And I said, well, I've got clinical proof that the vulva and the vagina are separate issues. And she said, well, I don't want to argue with you. So, I could see she was getting a bit, because, I don't mean to be confrontational, but it really bothers me. So I also had a lady from the Seroptimist International, a member, and I helped her with her dying process. And they all plead to me, so please, Kath, keep going. So, we're taught how to put a condom on a banana basically at school, but it really concerns me that there is a gynecological cancer research group that have not and still do not have a vulva in their diagram for the research. And I asked why, and they said, because we don't get funding for it. I said, but you've got a vagina there. Why don't you don't get funding for the vagina? And I don't mean to be disruptive, but somebody has to be disruptive about these women that are dying from vulval cancer. I noticed that there was a cream that states that's a vagina cream, and it says to rub on your vagina, but not for internal use. But what does that say to you? It's like, but there's some that disagree with me, and that's okay. I don't mind if they don't disagree, because I will keep fighting people like Jocelynne, who's allowed me to speak here today, because you know the depth of what I've been through, Jocelynne. Anyhow, this quilt here was made by the WA quilters. I went to visit my son in London, and a friend said, oh, Kath, bring it into BBC TV and see if they might be interested in my story. So I rang a gynecological cancer organisation in England, and I said, oh, can I come and have a chat? They said, no, sorry, we're busy, because I'm just a woman from, And anyhow, so I took this quilt up to the front counter of BBC TV, and I was on Woman's Hour the next week. And that was the year I won the West Australian Senior Australian of the Year. I've got 10 awards. I don't need any more recognition. But it's through the quilt that has, they've got other quilts that women have made, and it's their way of getting the message across. And from an academic level, you sort of think, well, what's a quilt? Whatever, But what it is, we need community involvement. And if we can get the community to make these undies, and I've got cardboard cutout undies, and we decorate them, and we've got a song called the Dynamite Song, and we dance with the knickers. But some women's organisations go, oh, you can't do that. You can have a bra for breast cancer, but not undies for gynecology. Well, I've been to the Royal College of Gynecology in London twice, seeking interest for the International Gynae Awareness Day. And so I'm a member of that organisation as the Women's Voices and also RANZCOG in Australia. So, you know, I'm ticking these boxes. Aren't I great? Aren't I wonderful? But I still feel exasperated when I hear this young girl dying and these other women having to endure what they do. So this week I've been told I am the ambassador for the Australian Gynecological Cancer Group, and they've just come out with vulva socks. Shock horror, why would you have vulva socks? But if you were to buy a pair of these socks and you wear them and you went to your friends and said, oh, look, I've got some vulva socks on, and you're empowered enough to say, yes, I'm promoting vulval health, you can still do it in a discreet, but, you know, in a fun sort of way. So, I was always told not to say that naughty word vulva in front of ethnic group or Aboriginal women's group by the Western women. And so I had a display table once at an Aboriginal's up in the country. And I've got some body parts that's shaped like a fruit bowl, that's the vulva, and a skinny vase, that's the vagina, and whatever else. And so I didn't put the name on there trying to be discreet. But one of the elders said to me, you should put the name Minnie on there so these women know what it is. So I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then people say to me, oh, you've got to be careful from an ethnic point of view. But I was asked by the Seroptimist to go and speak to 1,000 women in Kuala Lumpur. And I said to the international president, how am I going to say vulva in front of all those people when I'm not supposed to say that word? She said, Kath, I want you to do that. So what I'm showing you here, that there's a huge interest, especially with young women who want, you know, they can't understand what the big secrecy is about. But I found the word pudendum in the dictionary, and the Latin version of that word says female genitalia, one who should and ought to be ashamed, the shameful part of a woman. So we all call it a vagina because hundreds of years ago we were told to be ashamed of it. Well, I'm not ashamed of my desecrated body at all. So I do a fashion parade. I'm only giving you points of how we can help break down some of these barriers. My physio had some sashes made up for me, and we do a fashion parade when I do my presentations, and the ladies dress up with a crown on their head and we say, here's Miss Vagina, here's Miss Vulva, here's Miss Uterus, and the young ones love it, you know. So, you know, it might be confronting for some, but also when I was on my not-for-profit, we joined up with King Edward Hospital for women, and they've celebrated the Gynae Day for 8 years, but that's about as far as it's gone. But I did do a Viva La Vulva forum at the Royal Women's Hospital in Melbourne in 2003, and through our not-for-profit, we sent a petition off to the government. Are you keeping up with me here?
Yes, absolutely.
So we sent a petition off to the government, and they had a Senate inquiry, and from that, the National Gynecological Cancer Centre was established, and I've got the Cancer Australia Award for Gynecological Cancers. But I still bother them a little bit because I'm saying, well, where's the vulva? But with the Senate inquiry, they brought back the recommendations, and I went to Parliament House and I spoke about all these things embarrassingly in front of all these people. And when the recommendations came back, guess what wasn't on the diagram? No vulva. But also a gynecologist, I said I was having a vulva forum at St John of God in Perth, and the gynecologist in Parliament House, he came down to the car park and he said, we were having the Vulval Awareness Day, and he said, can't you call it a Female Genital Awareness Day? He was begging with me, you know, you can't say vulva. But what we've got to do is understand the history, because these gynecologists have been taught that we need to protect women and that we need to not say those naughty words. So we just need a more of a female input into gynecological health, because it's been run on a male model for far too long, dare I say. I wanted to read out, I can't read it here, but that politician that spoke in Parliament in Canberra, in Canada, I just love the way that she spoke. So I'll have to send you the link to that. I'll see if I can see it, because it's important for me to say it. Vulvas and vaginas are a source of strength, empowerment, and pleasure. Yet throughout our lives, we have been taught in turn that the terms vulva and vagina do not have a place in our polite conversation. That one more way that the bodies of over half the world population are stigmatized, sexualized, and objectified. With the recent news in the United States re the Roe and Wade, conversations about sexual and reproductive health are more important than ever. It starts here in the Parliament Hill. We need to reclaim space in the health research, politics, policy making at the doctor's office to celebrate the power of vulvas and vaginas. In 2022, we shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed to talk about our bodies, to reclaim the conversation and celebrate vulvas and vaginas as powerful as important. And on that note, I might just put it out there, and can we have some conversation about it?
Good. Thanks so much, Kath. Now, I'd like to ask about the day. This International Day, is it the 9th of September, International Day of Gynecological Awareness? And I believe it's the 9th of September, is that correct?
No, it's the 10th of September.
Oh, sorry.
But I'd also like to say that Ranscog put out a flyer on Twitter for the Gynae Awareness Day. But unless the community put more force on there, they just send a flyer out to Twitter. And I'm asking how do we get women's groups to support this day so we can have more research and funding?
I suppose that in our submission to CEDAW, we can advocate for the United Nations Day of Gynecological Awareness, which would be the 10th of September, because that's how it must have started, mustn't it? For the Day for the Disability, International Day of the Woman, and so on. It's had to start somewhere. Now, it's got more than a good run-up by all the work that you've been doing. So that's one thing, isn't it, that we can do. And then endeavour to get our own organisations to promote Gynecological Awareness Day, the 10th of September. But my colleagues here may have other ideas and questions for you, Kath.
Okay.
It's interesting you obviously mentioned you going to your gynecologist and them really not identifying these, your symptoms, especially that young girl. Is there a lack in the medical area in the field around gynecology, around vulva cancer?
Absolutely. There is hardly any research, but I know that if you want to contact the international president of vulval cancer, she's from Jean Hales, and she's dealing with vulvas all the time. So, I think we need to try and get the powers that be that are willing to do something about this, like the socks. If we could get 1,000 women to buy a pair of socks and wear the socks, it will sort of cause a ripple to be able to talk about these things. But I also want to say I see a huge difference between reproductive health and gynecological health. To me, reproductive is about having babies. Gynecology is about women and their conditions. I had to put that in.
Well, I was thinking, oh, sorry, Kerry.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm at the University of Buckingham ordinarily, and we're setting up a master's course in medicine, law and ethics, or law, medicine and ethics, because we have a medical faculty. And it was going through my mind that we're just drawing up the final outline. So I must ensure that I put into the bit that I'm doing this issue as there are many ways we can tackle it, aren't there? Tackle it from the point of view of a lack of awareness amongst the medical profession generally, and ethical issues about being cognizant of what the body parts are of women, that a vagina is different from a vulva, and that the vagina does not describe the whole of our genital area. I mean, there's the vulva, there's the clitoris, there's the, we can describe it in all sorts of ways, and we need to make sure that the medical profession is learning about this issue. So that's a contribution I would hope to make through that course. But do you have any issues here, Helen, that you'd like to raise with Kath?
No, Kath, it's a fascinating, presentation that you've given. Thank you so much for giving it. I am a little ashamed of myself in the sense that I don't, and I can't, and I'm sort of very keen to look a little closer at gynecological diagrams and to familiarise myself with something that I'm still not clear about. And so, yeah.
I recently drew a mother's attention to the fact that she constantly referred and taught her daughter to refer to her vulva area as her vagina. And I commented, it's not really the vagina, is it? It's the vulva. And she said, we don't want to confuse the child. We don't want to confuse it. Besides, vulva isn't as acceptable.
Yeah. But Kath, I'm so pleased that you sort of draw attention to how important it is to make, that people might say, oh, it doesn't really matter, or don't confuse people as if, it's a matter of small moment. But as you point out, it's much more than that. And so, your presentation is not only presented with such good humour and, and really affecting. And I found that also, that sense of the serious, at the same time, such a serious matter presented with such good humour and effectiveness. Thank you so much. I really can't say I enjoyed it because it's got a sad part to it, but I was really affected by it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. But if you were to hear the stories of the women and you think our sisters do not have to endure this, but I wanted to say about, I know a lady spoke at a retreat the other day, and she was a physio at a women's health centre, and I asked what we can do about using the correct terminology, and she says, well, I tell my daughter that it's a vagina, and when she's old enough, I'll tell her it's a vulva.
That's literally what I was told.
Also, Jocelynne, I think that Tanya Bowl, she does a hard yakka trying to get this message out in the world. And I think that we as women somehow or other need to get behind her. I know she was in India and recently, and I think stats in Australia, it's only 430, and I've got the stats somewhere. And you think, oh, well, that's not many, so who cares? But there's such a thing as pre-cancer. And so if it's a bit of pre-cancer, we chop it out. So you chop anything out of a woman's vulva and we get out there and we call it a vagina and we don't talk about these things. I don't want to sort of have vulvas splashed all over the place, but, let's bring it out and let's expose some of the suffering that's going on out there.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Have they has there been any work as to what may contribute to vulva cancer?
Yeah, sure. Mine was human papillomavirus related. I had an abnormal pap smear treatment years ago in the beginning, and I wasn't told anything about HPV or whatever. I found out accidentally that mine was HPV, but obviously HPV has come out a bit more and we understand that a bit more, but my heart lies with this lichened sclerosis. Somebody has to pick up on what's going on with lichened sclerosis. It was 1 in 80, because I've had a Zoom session with the female gynecologist and a dermatologist. Well, there's a lot of confliction about the business. This is big business. Gynae-vulval health is big business. So a dermatologist might say, well, yeah, put this cream on. The gynecologist might say, well, but yeah, put this cream on. Because I've heard these two women come together and they're very sad that You know, some gynecologists do the way they want to do it, and yet they can see sometimes it's different. So I don't think any of us have been down this track to investigate what is happening in this area.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Oh, sorry.
I just said I think you're right.
Just one thing I remembered, and then we need to conclude, but a colleague of mine raised the issue that in Australia, maybe 70s, we used to put baby powder. What we did was we pulled out our underpants and put a whole lot of baby powder just down there, and then would it be possible that baby powder might have had a negative consequence for women's genital area, in most particularly the vulva? I don't know if anybody's ever raised that with you, Kath, or if there's any work being done on it, but it came to my colleague's mind when she heard you talking, actually, so I'm just relaying it to you.
That's a damn good question, because ovarian cancer is related to sometimes to the baby powder as well, and you sort of think, well, if it's connected to the ovaries, how did the powder get into the ovaries? You know, so, you know, it's a good question for somebody to have a look at.
There has been a case in the US with a woman who sued Johnson & Johnson for having contracted, I think it was, I'm not sure exactly where the cancer was, but it was either ovarian, uterine, or it could have been, yes, one of them. I just remember there was a case and she won it.
Oh, yeah. So let's have a look at I'll ask Tanya what she thinks of it, but I'd love you to, I'll say it again, love you to support Tanya somehow or other, because she is Australian and she's fought the fight and seen many mutilated vulvas. And yeah, because I was the Jean Hales Women's Health Champion last year, and I sort of liaised with them quite a bit, but they did a podcast on me and I talked away. But what's missing is the voice of the women, like my story, like this mother who's lost her daughter. She wants to be heard, but you think, oh, we can't hear women talking about losing your daughter to vulval cancer. You know, I'm talking about face-wise, not just word-wise, you know, because I feel like we're kept in the dark. But there is a woman in England, Jocelynne, she's done a lot to do with vulval cancer, so it might be good for you to connect up with her as well. Claire somebody. I'll give you the contact details, okay?
Thank you. And yeah, that's really, really helpful. Good. Oh, and the other thing I just want to say, if BBC Women's Hour will have you on, we really need to reinstate Coming Out Ready or Not show. I mean, what is on the ABC that would specifically address women's issues? And if it's not there anymore, we need to say we want it back. And so, yeah, and then they will have you on, Kath, talking about that a vulva is not a vagina and a vagina is not a vulva, and that Women's Gynecological Awareness Day on the 10th of September must be instituted by the United Nations.
And maybe that would get the Seroptimist and the Zonta and the other United Nations women's group to get right behind this, you know. Yeah. So there's so much to be done. Anyhow, I'll let you go.
Good. Well, really wonderful to have had you. Thanks so much, Kath Mazzella.
And viva la vulva to you all.
Viva la vulva. And we'll now have a break. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.